Hello again. So we're approaching that point where we're starting to finish up all of the writing assignments, right? So for the term paper, and I've kind of had some questions. I feel like I've had to talk some people off the ledge a little bit, and so we'll talk a little bit about what this like assignment is and how it's structured. So keep in mind, right, like throughout the semester, after reading some submissions, it is clear that students are waiting until the last possible minute to complete it, which is what they would have done for the final paper, which is why we do it this way, right? So keep in mind, right, that throughout the semester, you guys are working and building towards the final term paper. So when it comes to the end, they're really, you just kind of stitch them all together, right? You clean it up, you edit, hopefully. So that way you're not like scrambling at the last minute like many of you would do. I say that not because, I can't fault you because I was the same way as a student, so I get it. I understand that, but this is really more for your benefit. So after looking through the feedback and kind of seeing some stuff, we'll address something real quick. So some people are like, they're really concerned about the paper, that they're not receiving as much time on it, how it's going to impact, and they're worried about getting transferring on to the main major. Keep in mind like what this course is, right? This course is really the key like make or break point for many people to get into the main major, right? You have to have a C minus or better throughout the term in order to transition, right? And like in any of the theory classes that you would take, you would have to write a paper, right? So whether you take it with me or Dr. Steinberg or Dr. Collier or whoever, it doesn't matter because you have to write the paper, right? So what does this mean, right? Is this like, if you get a C, is it something that, speaks poorly to you? No, it doesn't, right? We know this class is difficult, right? It's not intentionally difficult, right? It's just like the content is like really hard to understand. Many people struggle with it, and in some ways, that's what it is. And so people are concerned, oh, I got a C, like, does it think poorly on me? We don't think, like, when you transition over to the main major, no one thinks poorly of you. No one's like, oh, wow, you're a bad student. It's more like, hey, you checked the box, you did what you had to do, and let's move on, right? And people also get really anxious about the paper, and also keep in mind that all it is just a box check, right? Did you complete the paper? Did you do it well enough? If you can do it at this level, then you're ready for more advanced coursework. So try not to get caught up in the sense of like I or anyone else like would look at your grade and be like, that's a bad student, right? Like that's not how it works. That's not what we do. We don't like meet up over meet up and be like, oh, did you see that student got a C? Like don't do that. Don't worry about it. We're with you. We've been there. We understand. But with respect to the main paper, there are some things that people should be in mind. So as I've already mentioned, it is clear after reading through a lot of the submissions that a couple things are happening. One, people are writing poorly, right? Like the comments and evaluations are littered with people saying like, wow, you should really edit this, but it's not in the rubric, so like I can't take points off of it. But like keep that in mind. If you look at the rubric for the final term paper, grammar and syntax is an expected component. I don't have it on this one because, frankly, a lot of you would be waiting to the last minute and lose a lot of unnecessary points at this stage. And rather than focusing on the content and doing it, which is what the paper is really about, it'd be bad. Having said that, here's what your perspective should be when it comes to the final paper, right? So I'm going to paint this picture, right? Depending on the term, I have to grade 40 to 80 of these, right? Possibly more depending on the time and like everything else like that. And what ends up happening, right, is that, while I am trying to grade, give good feedback and everything like that, there is a situation where there's a lot of these, right? I have to go through it. The last thing that you want to do, right, is to make it difficult for me to read, right? One, because I can't infer your knowledge. I can't be like, oh, this is what this person meant. The last thing you want to is for me to be like struggling to understand you, right? Because here's where my mind goes, right? This person cannot communicate their knowledge, therefore I can't infer the knowledge. The fact that they cannot communicate it, I have to assume they don't know what they're talking about. if a sentence is like poorly written, that just amplifies that, right? Because now I'm in this position of not only does this person perhaps not comprehend the content, they also can't communicate it. So maybe this person needs to sit out, maybe take some more feedback, maybe take some more, tutoring sessions or something like that, or maybe they just can't handle it, right? So in that case, my like when I'm looking through like all these papers, as much as I like try to be like softer and understanding of people's situations, I'm not in a position where I'm going to be like, I'll pass them, right? Like that's not my mindset, right? It's more like, okay, this person isn't ready yet. They need some more time. I'm sure they can get there, but they're not ready yet. That's my mindset. The other part too is that when things are poorly written or they don't meet all the content, like here's what happens, right? Like when I'm reading a paper, right? I want to read the paper out here, where it's like, okay, yeah, blah, 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 blah. I can see, they have appropriate subheadings. It's written really clear. They're talking about there. They got the history. They're giving me some policy stuff, like whatever, right? As soon as it starts becoming poorly written, this paper gets closer, right? I'm like, because I'm struggling to read, like what's going on. This paper also, then each time I find one, right, I'm getting closer and closer. There's no subheadings. I really have to grind through. I have to like follow this rubric. They make it really hard, and so on. All of a sudden, this paper's like right here, right? So there's something that happens when this paper's right here compared to when it's right here, right? When it's out here, I'm like, yeah, checking boxes, things are looking pretty good, whatever, blah, blah, blah. When it's right here, and I'm really starting to have to think about this grade, I really have to like struggle to read this, right? You have this mental thing happens where I start finding every single little thing wrong, right? And you don't want that, like, as a student, right? You don't want that as a professor, because as soon as the professor starts finding everything, points start going away. They start evaporating, right? They're gone. What you should do is make it as easy as possible, as clear as possible, as structured, as organized as possible, because you want me to be like, yeah, all right, yeah, we're good, right? That is what you want. And that's true not only for me, right, but for other people. Now, does that mean, like, I don't read papers? Of course I read the papers, right? I give a lot of feedback. I have been told that sometimes, students read my feedback and they get very upset. Like I read them all, right? Point being is that you don't want to be in that position, right? So please structure and organize your paper in future assignments. Please edit, right? No points are going to be taken off for it at the end of the term paper, because the last thing you want is a grumpy professor reading your paper, right? Like that's what it is. It's going to be in the semester. I want to get out. If you're like wasting my time because it's taking forever to read your work, you have no sympathy for me. What can I say? The other part that seems to be popping up is that because people are waiting to the last possible minute, they're not putting any work into the assignment. And what seems to be happening in quite a few instances is that students will not have watched any of the single lectures, right? I look at the video count. And when I post them in a given week, it's not like at what an expected level everyone was watching it. But I can track the views of it, and it's interesting is that like the views spike right before one of these assignments is due. And what ends up happening in the papers, right, is that you end up seeing a lot of like direct quotes from me or like transcripts that are from me, and it's very clear, or it gives the impression anyway that a student is saying that. Like in this case, like the student is saying, okay, in this situation, I just copied and pasted, I'll be fine, right? Keep in mind, like this paper is not about your ability to copy and paste what I say or transcribe what I say, or just like it's about demonstrating your own knowledge and explaining things in such a way that shows that you're capable of advanced work in the next main major, right? So when you don't have that, when that's missing, when it's gone, in those situations, like it looks poorly, right? So if I start reading something like, wow, that sounds exactly what I would say, and I find it like, so you straight up plagiarized me, or most of your work is like, just copying what I said, or there's giant block quotes from people. All this person knows how to do is copy and paste. Or just like transcribe. And while they may like know how to copy and paste in certain places, that doesn't demonstrate a higher level of thinking required for a degree in higher education. In those instances, I'm going to say no, right? Like this person's not ready. They need to wait, maybe spend some more time. There's nothing wrong with that, but they're not ready yet. that's what's going to happen, right? And if you want to try me, great, fine, we can do that, right? But like, I don't know why you would do that to yourself. So this is not so much like a warning. It's just like, if you're in this habit now, like, you need to stop, right? You know, you have time, but like, you know, like, don't do that, right? This is really what it comes down to. A lot of different comments as well is that, you know, there seems to be a lot of like detail, right? And as I've expressed before, and I would say it again, right? You know, the really most effective papers for this course, you know, when they explain something, right, they state it, right? They're defining it, and then they're also explaining like what it means, right? So they're like, people who do that, who mimic that behavior, have way stronger patterns. They have way stronger papers, and it's much more easy to say this person's ready to move on. We feel safe about them continuing the program. So anytime that's missing or lacking or anything like that, you know, it's just, you know, like, it's not good. I can't, you know, I can't justify that to someone else. So make sure that you're taking the time to put in the detail, because that is like one of the number one comments across all papers, right? Is doing that. The other part is that, you know, I will encourage y'all not to use the book in order to cite stuff, right? Now, you can cite articles that are listed within the book. That is appropriate and acceptable, but not the book itself. Make sure you don't do that. But those are the big three things that are coming up right now. Sometime soon, you know, the third assignment will come back, and I'll take a look and, you know, give more feedback here. But I will say this for anyone who's, you know, reviewing assignments for other people, that you do someone a disservice if you are not being honest and critical with their work. Not mean, but like actual feedback, right? Anytime that you are too soft, anytime that you are being a little generous with your grades, does the person a disservice, because later on when they meet someone like me who's going to grade and maybe be more difficult, harsher, or whatever, you know, it creates a problem for them later, because they have one expectation and then they're like, oh, that's not good at all, right? Be mindful of the fact that you were supposed to demonstrate your knowledge, and that you're supposed to show that you can elaborate, explain, define all the stuff yourself. That's all I can say, right? You know, maybe you get away with it for a little bit, but at the end of the day, right, you know, over 25% of your grade is coming down to this final paper, regardless of what happens with the peer review assignments. If you do poorly on the peer review assignment, or excuse me, on the final paper, like, you're not in a good position to pass the course. So take the time and effort to listen to the feedback that you're given, further explain and define, maybe like, you know, like summarize and write on it. And so at the last moment, right, you're not scrambling at the end. But with that, we'll kind of end this video. This is not meant to scare, it's more just like things to be mindful of in the future, not only for my class, but other classes. But until then, I'll see you guys later, so deuces.